Hello, everyone. This is Gary Gomes. I'm back again with another astrological report for you. I do Vedic astrology. I live in New Bedford, Mass, USA. I've been doing Vedic astrology for about 30 years, 30th anniversary this past November. And I, I did learn it properly, so you don't have to worry about uh, any made up stuff. The major thing that I'd like to talk about this broadcast is about the upcoming year, 2021. And I'll look at two charts that are commonly looked at for the New Year's chart. One is, let me start to share. And I know last week I received a report from somebody who watches the channel that my particular chart that I had um, posted to share it didn't show up. So I will make sure that this chart actually does show up on the screen for you to see. Um, and I will also post the charts I was looking at the last broadcast so you can see uh, the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction and its effect and how I said it was going to affect the world. I will be doing a separate broadcast later on for uh, the Chinese New Year because that's interesting in and of itself. And I know a bit about Chinese astrology. I'll probably throw in some more divination techniques. So this is part one of two videos. But I think one of the things that, oh, by the way, if you want to contact me for readings, you should contact me either through Crystal Expectations at 508-990-7898 or at 508-525-0001. That's my cell phone. And I teach Vedic astrology. I have very exciting plans to start a school this year. I'm an instructor at Kepler. I'm an instructor at Dara Academy. I have been the president of the Council of Vedic Astrology, et cetera, et cetera. I have an actual doctoral degree in education. I have an actual MBA. I have an actual bachelor's degree. So these are the kinds of things that I'm just sharing with you just to show that I'm um, not that I'm better than anybody else, but that I sort of paid my dues in terms of where I'm coming from and how I'm talking with you. So as we look at the New Year chart, this should be the New Year chart. I'm going to start up again because I said my screen sharing is paused. So I'm going to do a new share. I'm going to stop the share and do a new share. And let's see if I can get it. All right. So now I'm screen sharing, and this is the chart for. This is a chart I like to use for January 1st. Typically, I will either use this chart, which is a 6 a.m. chart, which roughly corresponds to sunrise, but it really doesn't in this case. So I'm going to use the midnight chart for the year for 2021. So a lot of exciting stuff happening this year. I'm going to be more on television, more on radio, more on podcasting, which I plan to set up this coming weekend. I'm very excited about it. I got some nice equipment that's just been sitting dormant for about the past 8 months, which I haven't gotten around to setting up. So let's look at this chart. We have um, this is for the midnight chart, and typically around this time of year, the midnight chart is always going to be Virgo. The sunrise chart is always going to be Sagittarius. So that's not really going to change in any great detail. So essentially, what we're going to look at is the houses from the Virgo rising chart. So Mercury is in the fourth house It's within 7 degrees of the sun, so it's technically what Indian astrologers call combust. Now, combustion isn't such a big deal. So if a planet's combust, the effects or the houses it rules tend to be weakened a bit. And so whenever that happens, uh, astrologers have a tendency to get a little bit concerned that it's going to affect communications. But everything, communications, especially in the United States, is really not a solid phenomenon anyway. It's most communications, as you probably know and have experienced through the years, most communications aren't reliable. They're inconsistent. You have different people saying different things about other people. And that's why Mercury, although it's a good planet, is essentially, it's not untrustworthy. It changes, it shifts perspective. So news is inherently difficult for a lot of countries around the world. It's controlled in some countries. It's biased in other countries. It's you never get clean news. And really speaking, in order to get clean news, you have to have unbiased analysis, which is basically impossible. So this is as a former journalism major. I'm telling you this is not. So you can try to get stuff that's pretty clean, but you'll never get stuff that's exactly clean. So I'm just cautioning you about that. Anything you see on the news, anything you see in social media, anything in um, any mode of communication, be very careful about it just because the nature of news, the perspective, the mindset of the people, that's the moon, is going to change. Um, and so this doesn't mean you can't trust what you see, but it's a relativistic phenomenon. And by that I mean one person's perception of reality will differ from another person's perception of reality. There are facts, and then there's how we interpret facts. So, so essentially, when you see Mercury in this kind of a state, don't worry. It's not really a catastrophe. It's just sort of the way things are. And so, I hope I haven't thoroughly confused you about that. But as the new year starts, we have Sun and Mercury in the fourth house. So Mercury isn't always in that house. So sometimes it'll be in the third, sometimes it'll be in the fifth, but this year it is in the fourth house. We have Venus with Ketu in the third house. Now this is interesting because Venus and Ketu are right on top of each other. So this is going to give confusion over what we want and what we desire in society. And it's also going to give us, because Venus is the planet along with Jupiter that rules truth, it's also going to give us some perceptual problems with the truth. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, basically, you're going to have incredibly opposing positions, as we've already seen, about what constitutes the truth, both in terms of elections, but also what constitutes the truth in terms of the fulfillment of our desires. And by that, I mean there'll be confusion about relationships, there'll be confusion and almost a need for detachment from a relationship, um, anxiety. So if somebody's like really looking to get into a relationship, this year is going to be really tough to make that decision because this Venus Ketu conjunction will always have you very critical of relationships or very suspicious of relationships. So that's something to look out for, and that'll persist at least for about 4 months. Okay. The other thing we're looking at is in terms of Jupiter and Saturn in the fifth house, the luck of the chart, and this is past high credit, so we have some heavy um, things to resolve because of the COVID-19 virus, obviously. But we also have a little bit of optimism because Jupiter's outside of Saturn's control by the time the new year comes around. So essentially, what happens is this thing I've spoken about before called planetary war. There are a variety of ways to interpret it. I tend to look at it as the planet which is lower longitude wins. So Saturn is lower longitude, but Venus is outside of 1 degree. I'm sorry, Jupiter's outside of the 1 degree range. So it's not really going to affect us that much. As a matter of fact, you may see some optimism coming around this time. Saturn is in its own sign. This is good overall for stability and solidity. It isn't good though for economic expansion. So that's one of the things that makes it a little bit difficult over the next few months. So Saturn's in its own sign. I've never seen a situation in which Saturn's been exalted or in its own sign. And especially if Jupiter's been weak, where the economy's really strongly expanded. So in 2000, we had this kind of a condition. In 1980, we had this kind of a condition. 1960 was the last time. 1961 was the last time we had this conjunction, and the economy showed an upward expansion. But we were also coming out of a recession at the end of the Eisenhower administration. So essentially, what this means is basically as the year starts, we'll be in a recession. After around April, the end of April, Jupiter sneaks into, I'm using the word sneaky, maybe a little bit too cavalierly, but basically, cavalierly, wow, that was tough for me. And it's moving into Aquarius. So, what does that mean? Well, you'll start to see some pickup, some people starting to get more optimistic, less down. Jupiter in Capricorn is typically kind of I really can't do anything about this kind of a situation. And you'll start to see the economy pick up. I would say even before April, the end of April, but definitely when Jupiter moves into Aquarius. The other thing is, I am so happy over the past week that Mars has moved into Aries. And I'll tell you why. If Mars is in Pisces, I've seen it again and again and again, it tends to freeze people in action. So they feel like they're swimming around, they're trying to find direction in life. Mars and Aries, they know they have to take action, they know they have to do something. Now, in this chart, both Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars are aspecting the moon. The moon's in Cancer, which is its preferred sign. Yet light is its home base, okay? And Rahu is in Taurus, which is its preferred sign, and Ketu is in Scorpio, which is its preferred sign. Now, Ketu and Venus, let me just go back to Ketu and Venus for a second, so I'll talk about the moon in one more minute. But Venus and Ketu can lead to love affairs, scandalous love affairs, unexpected love affairs, but they won't have, they'll have this feeling of predestination to them, but they'll also be a little bit risky because people who get involved in them can lose everything they have. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you fall in love with somebody like head over heels, just be prepared that it may come at the loss of everything that you have. And it sounds very romantic, but it's really nasty. But it will be almost if a love affair does come, so there'll be this kind of detachment for people who are more career oriented, but for people who are more love oriented, they'll have real struggles controlling their impulses and real struggles not feeling like they're in a fated relationship. Rahu is also in Taurus, which we spoke about before. It's in the 9th house of the chart. So actually, this gives actually a good element of luck to the chart over the next 12 months. If we compare it to other charts, it's not really that bad a position. It's just the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And if we want to include Pluto there, Pluto's there as well. I normally don't, but I'll do it just because it's so obvious in the chart. It'll cause some kind of a rebirth or regeneration of countries that have strong Capricorns. the United States, China is is a strong Capricorn. Uh, it's not a Capricorn ascendant, but it's but one of its direct planets is Capricorn. This is the United States' second house of money. Okay, so like I said, there'll be a little bit more tightening of the belt over the next couple of months, and then finally somebody will figure out some way to get some money out. It's interesting because I'm right on the border. This is December 26th. We're right on the border of the financial aid package, the stimulus package, and I'm going to say that it'll be passed, and there'll be a supplemental uh, plan, plan, but it won't be passed. And 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 I think that I actually think the president will sign just to avoid a shutdown, but I know he's been kind of erratic lately, so it's still and Jupiter's still within that 1 degree right now. So it's possible they may just decide to do something around January 6th, get something done around January 6th. Um, the longer this doesn't get resolved, the higher the chances you'll see of a $2,000 stimulus check. So that's the good news, but it does cause a lot of anxiety for people. Also, getting back to the moon is aspected by Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. So two malefics. So 1, 2, Mars and Saturn are malefics, and Jupiter's a benefic. So this will mean the public will be in a very unforgiving mood right now. Um, there'll still be a lot of suspicion, but people will want a fair degree of normalcy this year. They won't want a lot of disruption. So to me, that's what it looks like. In terms of who will assume power, to me, it still looks like Joe Biden will assume power. Um, but I do think investigations into election fraud will continue for months, at least for 4 months, and possibly longer. And the main reason I'm saying that is mainly because of this K2 um, placement in the 12th house in the US's chart, and also the US is in a short Saturn subperiod right now, and people won't let go of these things. They'll just keep on going after them. I'm not saying right now, and keep something in mind. I'm not saying the cases. I have a suspicion. This is a personal opinion. I have a suspicion something went on. Um, the magnitude that's being claimed, I don't know. I don't know whether or not it would have made a difference. But I do have a. This is just a personal opinion, um, and I'm not a reporter, so I'm not trying to make unverified claims. So please, YouTube, don't knock me off just because I'm saying that. But if you look at the chart, it's kind of interesting because, and again, the United States isn't the only country in the world. We have other countries in the world which will be affected by this New Year chart. And I'm going to go to what's called the Makara Sankranti in a second. I'll probably be off by a little bit. Makara Sankranti is when, in Vedic astrology, the sun moves from uh, Sagittarius into Capricorn. And that's really the year that most Indian astrologers use for New Year's predictions. And as I said, I will set up a separate broadcast for the Chinese New Year. And if you know me at all, you know that I don't come into these sessions scripted at all. I have certain things I want to cover, um, but I'm not a scripted person. Um, and All right, so we have, this is interesting. We have a Mars line right over Washington, D.C. So there's going to be, this is going to be a hot year in Washington. Um, Basically, a lot of fighting. Mars is in Aries, which is its own sign. Mars is in, and there's going to be a lot of fighting about fraud because K2 is in Scorpio. A lot of attention to cover-ups of all kinds. This isn't just one political party or another, because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio in Indian astrology, and the moon sign is also coming. So there'll be a lot of public concern, a lot of public outrage over the next year. This will not dissipate when Joe Biden assumes the presidency, if he does. But again, it looks highly likely to me that he will. The other thing is, so that Mars line, and again, one of the reasons I focus on that, we have a Mars Jupiter Moon conjunction, like right over, basically in Puerto Rico, and and just off Florida. So all these lines are coalescing here, but like I said, that Mars line through Washington and through New York State and through Maryland and North Carolina, that looks interesting. Now, again, one of the things we've noticed over the past few months, and I actually predicted it in an earlier broadcast, was the possibility of earthquakes in the East Coast. And that Mars line is going to actually do that. There'll also be demonstrations in the East. There'll also be political conflict. And that's mainly because Mars is aspecting the moon, so the public will be riled up. Also, um, as we follow this Jupiter and Saturn line through the Midwest, um, they're going to be in for a really tough winter. So um, this is through Michigan, Indiana. Michigan's right here. Sorry, uh, Indiana, Ohio, Iowa. I'm sorry, Ohio, uh, down through um, South Carolina. So expect a very tough winter for them. Uh, a lot of problems. Also, we had the recent issue with Nashville. Like I'm coming on this at the end of the Nashville explosion, and there will be some kind of terrorist activity linked to that. The other thing is we have, so nothing really happening in the West Coast. We do have a sun line passing through Texas, and we do have, let me just see if there's anything else here that's worth noticing in the United States. We do have a, a Mercury line going through Texas as well. So again, communications issues, air flight issues. Also, Brazil, again, continues to look like it's in rough shape to me. A lot of problems in the middle of Brazil. A lot of disease, unfortunately, because of the Saturn um, aspect. Also, if we look over here, we have a Moon and a Mars line in Eastern Europe going down, almost touching Turkey, almost, but not quite, more Greece. But that will make it more prone to earthquakes, especially in the Aegean. And so that plate will have some problems. The sun is passing through London. London will be the center of a lot of activity over the next year. But I think you'll actually start to see the coronavirus start to dissipate a little bit. I know I may sound overly optimistic, but I think that with the virus and with the vaccines going as they have been, um, you'll start to see a decline in cases. I would say I would be more on the optimistic side by the second quarter of the year. The other thing is, so we're not seeing disease spread because Rahu's over here in the middle of the ocean. And in Africa, though, Northern Africa will probably be subject to civil unrest. And this is a line of, can't tell what that line is, I'm sorry. Yeah, it looks like a Venus line. No, Venus line is over here near Iceland, so Iceland's going to have a good time of it. But again, I watch out for things like volcanoes in Iceland. The other thing is we have over here is we have a Sun, Mercury, Venus, Rahu line passing over China and India. So I'm a little bit afraid of war between those two countries. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think that's the most likely place for a conflict to break out. I hope I'm wrong about that. And I hope it doesn't break out anywhere. And Venus is passing over. It's passing between New Zealand and Australia, so you'll probably see um, some minor outbreaks in New Zealand of COVID, and also we're talking about a lot of miscommunication from China this year. A lot of governmental miscommunication. The main thing that I want to stress about COVID-19 is that we've had some discussion lately about a mutation, and viruses mutate relatively frequently, from what I understand. I'm not a scientist, but they mutate relatively frequently. And as a matter of fact, about 4 months ago in the United States, I was watching a doctor who had a clinic who was set up specifically to treat COVID cases, and he has said that he noticed the virus tended to be spreading more quickly. There was no sign of it spreading more lethally, but more quickly. And if you think about it, that's an adaptive uh, mechanism. So essentially, if people are wearing masks, viruses don't think this way, but you'll have more chances of a virus spreading if it gets more efficient at spreading. So that's probably why we're seeing um, this mutation gaining prominence, because its um, former delivery mechanism wasn't as efficient. So the spread will probably continue. The vaccinations will continue definitely for, I would say, until September, but I think we're going to see actually close to normal activity more in April at the latest September. Um, and so let's switch over to um, the Karasan Kranti chart. Oops, excuse me. And I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to do a new share. Okay, so that's the last screen share, and now I'll say adieu. Okay, let me just try this one more time. Just want to make sure you can see the chart. Okay, so that's it, my friends. I'll talk to you soon. I just hope everything shows up okay, and have a great New Year. I should be on again before New Year's, but who knows? Bye. I'll talk to you soon. I'll probably go through the year for each sign and for the month of January very soon. Okay, bye bye.